Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlock, and we are with Quintessence Last, our level 39 brute who has 8 million XP, 2.5 million, quarter million to go to get to level 40, and 33 million influence. We're on a story arc, and we have to stop the Devouring Earth in this lab because they're trying to kidnap some technicians, defeat all. I went into this lab. I'm going to make my third attempt at this mission. I went into this lab at +2 times 3, and it was just brutal. Died twice. I could have done it. It would have probably taken me an hour to do the lab. The number of guys in the spawns is insane, and the problem with the Devouring Earth is they're all huge. They're all like taller than this, and when you get surrounded by them, I just can't see what I'm doing. I can't see who I've got targeted. I can't see their health bars. You can't jump away to get out of the mess because you're inside a lab, and some of the ceilings are really low. They surround you, and then somebody drops a quartz, and you can't get out of it, and so then just auto hit and you die. It's just too much, and it was going to take forever. I want a challenge, but I don't necessarily want to be frustrated. So we're down to just +2 times 1. We'll do that with these guys, and then when we get off the Devouring Earth, we might raise it back up to ×2. It's just too much. This is the same basic decision I made with, I think, Silver Phoenix and also Tiger Shrike, that as nice as it is to get the challenge of ×3, and it was a good challenge. It just takes too long to do the individual missions, and I really don't want to have to spend. Like, I was spending so long fighting individual spawns that within that same fight, I could trigger Soul Drain twice. That means individual spawns were taking me like 2 minutes to do. This one took me 1 minute and 15, right? I mean, just when you think about how long that was taking, it was just too much. So this is probably going to be too easy. But even at ×2, the main problem was all the guardians that you get. I hit a double spawn where I couldn't peel them out, and there were 2 guardians. So one would put a quartz down, I got out of it. This is on ×2. Then the other one put a quartz down, and they nailed me, right? Because you can't get out of both radii at the same time. And so I just decided not worth it. So we're back to ×2, +2 times 1. So it's still +2 mission, but it's enough for one guy. We may go back to ×2 or ×3 even, depending on who we fight next as enemies. But I think for the Devouring Earth, it's not practical, mainly because of the size of the bad guys and how there's so many of them are so much taller. And you can see we still have double guardians here, but it's not as difficult because there's only one other guy. So we're going to pull these guys up. And the main issue is where he puts his quartz down, right? Because when he puts it down, we have to run out of it. So he put it downstairs. That's good. So now we'll try to get him up here. And so what happened is I got him up here, and then I ran downstairs to get away from him, not knowing that other guardian was down there. I didn't see him. So this happened, and then I ran downstairs, right? And being auto-hit the entire time by like 7 guys, not just 2, right? You can see what just 2 of them are doing to me. And I got downstairs, and oh man, there's another guardian. Like, how did this guy put quartz? Oh, there's another guardian, and I just had time to think of that. Faceplant. So yeah, and these are things where this is, I think, another example in terms of the way they do the conning system in COH. Not that they can do anything other than purple with the Guardians, right? But I think much like the some of the Circle, the Spectre Demons, I think the Guardians ought to con a level higher. They should con as a boss, because they basically are harder than a boss to fight because of the quartz, because the auto hit. And if you don't know it, you're going to die. And even if you do know it, you might die because you can't stop them from doing it. If there are 2 of them, you absolutely can't stop them from doing it. And the other thing that's been happening to me, and I don't know if it's my computer, I've been having some issues with it. It locked up twice on me the last couple days. So I don't know if it's that or what, but the But a couple times now I've hit the buttons, you know, the hot buttons, and nothing happens. So I click Shadow Maul and it just doesn't trigger, or I click Soul Drain and it just doesn't trigger. So I don't know if it's me, if it's the game. I mean, the game has been having these connection issues, and they've been having map disconnect issues. They're still having them, they said, as of Sunday. Today's Tuesday, so I think it's still going on. Haven't noticed any network issues on the net graph, but there have been a number of times where I've clicked one of these and then just nothing happened. And that's a good way to die too, right? Because you're not doing damage when you're supposed to be. So all of that combined made me just decide to drop down to ×1. Hope nobody minds, but you're stuck with it because that's what I've decided to do. Now, of course, the problem is with ×1 is that this stuff is just silly, right? They can't even challenge me. And again, and this is one of the things that I used to have arguments with Statesman about, the swinginess, right? The one room with 2 Guardians and Sardonyx, you could die from that if you're not careful. This section over here with a couple orange guys, it could be 10 orange guys, they can't even do anything to me. Right? And so I feel like it should be not as swingy. Of course, yet one of the many arguments I lost when arguing against Statesman, because one generally didn't win arguments against Statesman. Just can't hit these guys. But you see how hard it is to see what you're doing because of how big they are. So this is similar to what it was like on ×2. Not exactly, because we don't have a Guardian in this group. But that, where I got multiple spawns coming after me, is what it was like at ×2. And normally, you know, as a brute, I like being kind of surrounded, so I can just pound everybody. But against the Devouring Earth, because they're so tall, and they obscure everything, it makes it very difficult to see what's going on. Alright, so we have another prisoner here. And like, this room is not so bad because it's a large room, but in the narrow hallways, very hard to see what you're doing. And of course, when it's not just 2 guys, but it's, you know, 12 guys, very difficult. And a couple of the spots, like here, you have the kidnappers and 2 spawns in this room, right? So if a spawn is, you know, 2 or 3 guys, that means the room has, or is there 3 spawns, right? So that room, this room had, what, say 9 guys plus the kidnappers, so about 11 or 12 guys this way. On ×3, it would have had like 36 guys in here. And that's just so hard to even see what's going on when there are so many of them. So anyway, we're back to ×1, at least for this story arc. Elevator here, but we have to explore the rest of this level. There's 1 more technician. My guess is that means 1 more level. But it is a defeat all, so we could save all the technicians and we'd still have to take out all the other guys. So it doesn't really matter how many technicians there are. Alright, so level 5, it says? I don't know, this is actually only the 3rd level. Yeah, so this stuff, it's like, yeah, I don't even have to worry about this. Right. Because it's just 2 guys. Did that not work? Soul Drain? Did I miss them both? I guess I did. Did this guy just walk through a wall? There's some weird stuff going on in this server. And I haven't seen, what, 2 Guardians this whole time? The last time I fought like 5 Guardians in the first level and a half. Those guys are the ones that make it hard, right? Greater Devourers are nothing compared to the Guardians because of those quartzes. And here's our last prisoner. And now we just have to defeat all the Devouring Earth. And we can see that there are only a couple left. Pretty good. Where's this guy? Where is he? There's nobody there. Alright, I guess that's a mistake. And the Sardonyx is just wandering around by himself. And that's the mission, guys. I guess we've worked off our debt. Wow. This character hasn't died in like 25 levels, and she died 3 times in 20 minutes. Wow. Okay. Ginger says, the fertility drugs, Hamadon's letter to Tanya. I'm beginning to put this together, Quintessence Lass. We know that Hamadon's tried to create a progenitor before, a being that can produce more devouring earth creatures. He's always been thwarted in that attempt, but what if he found another way? I believe Hamadon intends to make Tanya into a devouring earth matriarch. A breeder for new monsters. Yep, that's what he's trying to do. Last round of drug raids made me think the devouring earth aren't through with Tanya. I'd like you to go to the safe house and debrief Tanya. Yeah, she's going to be being attacked, I'm sure. We are about halfway through this episode, so let's go ahead and auto-teleport. And this will get us directly to the mission door, so that saves us a little bit of time. Not much, since we were actually pretty close to the elevator, but that's okay. Not elevator. Train station. I don't know why I keep calling it an elevator. It's an elevated train. I think that's why. So guys, it is end of March when I'm recording this. That means it's springtime. That means you may hear me sniffling and coughing and whatever a little bit, because I do get a little bit of allergies. Not horrible, but I get it a little bit. And I think I've said this story before when I came to interview here. And somebody asked me, do you get bad allergies? I said, I used to get them when I was younger, but I haven't had them in a while. And he said, we'll revive them for you. Might have been the assistant chair of my department, because man, he used to walk around. You talk about the face masks everybody's wearing. Well, he wore them basically every March, April, May. He was walking around with a surgical mask to try and keep the pollen out, because he just had very awful allergies. Not fun. Fortunately, I knock on wood, haven't had that. I do sometimes get red eyes, and it's not just redness of the eye that you put Visine to take the red out. I actually have a condition called ocular rosacea, and sometimes the pollen will make it flare up. I take eye drops pretty much every day. At this time of year, I take them a little bit more frequently. So now we have some guards to rescue. Just making sure we don't have any guardians in this spawn. So guys, you maybe have been paying attention to the ongoing saga of me discussing, I think that a friend of mine, one of my best friend who's playing D&D has asked for certain magic items, and I don't know if I mentioned this. I think I may have. He asked for, so they were in the astral plane a couple of sessions ago, and not while they were on the astral plane, but you know, now that they're back, he noticed that in Tasha's Cauldron of Everything there is some sort of a sorcerer or magic item called an astral shard, and said, hey, could I maybe come back from the astral plane with this? It sort of makes sense. And my immediate thought was no, you don't get to pick the magic items that you want, right? The DM puts those into the campaign for you, and he wasn't happy about it, and he said, well, you know, why not? And I said, well, you know, it's sort of playing favorites. The other players, you know, they haven't gotten to pick magic items. And, well, let them each pick one. It's not a very powerful item. I'm willing to pay the monetary cost. And so this went back and forth, and it got a little heated, and he finally said, okay, forget it. If it's that big of a deal, we'll just forget about it. But I didn't want him to be completely unhappy, and yet I didn't want him to be completely able to get a free magic item just because he read it in the book. And as I thought about it, I realized, well, there is some precedent that the cleric in the group has... so I guess let me back up. At the beginning of the campaign, I said for every +1 charisma bonus, minimum of 1, so even if you have -1 charisma, which one of the characters does, you still get one of these. You get one guys to know. It's called I know a guy, or also called the Lando Calrissian rule, right? Hey, I know this guy over in the Anoed system, or, you know, over by Bespin, and he can help us fix the Millennium Falcon. So the I know a guy idea is when you're completely stuck with something, you can say, I know a guy, and you can spend the I know a guy point, and it's permanently spent. So you only get so many of these per campaign. Most of the players, other than the sorcerer, everybody only got one. And the guy can help you with stuff. Now, my intention for this was that they would be able to use it when they get stuck with the lore, or when they get stuck on a puzzle, or something like that. But so far, only the new player has really kind of used it for that. They were on one side of a river, and they needed to get across the river. And she said, and they were in the forest that she grew up in. She said, can I know like a half-elf or something who lives in the forest and was friends of my family and can, like, ferry us across the river? And I was like, are you sure you want to use your Noah guy for that? And she's like, well, I can't really imagine my character would know anybody anywhere else than in this forest. So yeah, I guess we kind of can. It's fine. I says, all right, well, I made it a little bit more involved. His mother was this elf, and so she knew a little bit of lore that she was able to help them with, and so I made it a little bit more meaty of a Lando, But the cleric was the first one to use it, and he said, can I use my I know a guy to help my character get like spell components and maybe some spell scrolls for because he's learning wizard spells in addition to cleric spells. Because he has the ritual magic feat. Excuse me, and there goes my allergy. Pardon me, I didn't hit the mute fast enough. That one came on very quickly. So, so I thought about this, and I said, well, he's been using his I know a guy to get the Find Familiar scroll. He used his I know a guy to get some rare spell components, like I think he needed a pearl. I can't remember now. And a couple of other items, and so I thought, well, if he got to do that, then maybe the sorcerer can do it too. So I said to him, well, if you want, you can use your I know a guy to do it. And he said, how many of them do I have left? I said, well, you've used one. He used one to have the guy help him find his girlfriend. And I said, you got 3 more, because he started with an 18 charisma and therefore +4 in charisma. And so he said, yeah, okay, I'll use it. So I'm like, well, if he's willing to burn a limited resource, right? You get forever, and you want this thing so bad that you're willing to burn a resource for it, like the cleric burned his resource to get some spell components, then I guess, yeah, that your uncle, just like his, I was like, well, if you're going to burn it, your uncle will have the spell components. I think they're going to maybe regret using these I know a guys doing this kind of stuff, because like to get a magic item, you can get magic items from adventuring, right? And it's not a necessary item. What I've been expecting them to do is know somebody who's a librarian or something, and they have all of these lore questions that they can't ask normal people because it's illegal to talk about this in the Roman Empire, but their I know a guy might be able to talk about it. And so I keep expecting them to go to their know a guy, their Lando, and say, what can you tell us? For example, they are finding these inscriptions on the wall of each temple. They found 2 so far, but they expect to find a lot more, and they will. And each one has a Roman numeral, which tells you the order in which to arrange them. And also, each one is signed by initials TLP. And nobody's questioned the TLP yet. They haven't asked about it. They don't seem to They don't seem to have noticed it. No one's asked about it at all, which I'm surprised about. And if they had asked, I would have said, make some sort of a history check or something. And if they made it, say, well, it looks sort of like the way Romans sign things, right? They have 3 initials: praenomina, nomina, cognomina. This looks like somebody's initials. So it could be the person, the name of the person who carved it. Well, it's not the person who carved it physically, but it's the person who wrote what was carved. And it stands for Titus Livius Patavinus, which is Livy, who's a famous Roman historian in the real world. And if they had asked the right guy in their I know a guy, I was kind of expecting that somebody's I know a guy to tell them this is Livy. And then they could have maybe looked up something about Livy's history and whatever, and maybe even the I know a guy would have known that Livy was executed, not in the real world, in my world, Livy was executed for stating the history of Rome that the emperors didn't want anybody to know about, right? So he wrote the history of the Roman Empire. He wrote the history of Augustus and sort of the authorized biography of Augustus and stuff, and then he went and wrote the backstory of the Roman Empire, the pre-empire history, and he wrote what he wasn't supposed to write. He wrote that Rome had a sacred name, which no one's supposed to know, and he didn't say what the sacred name was, but they felt like, and this is true in the Roman Empire, that they were safest if no one even knew there was a sacred name, so that you couldn't try to figure it out. And so he wasn't, so the real Livy didn't do this, but this character basically said stuff he wasn't supposed to say, and he was executed for it. And I kind of expected them to have figured this out by now. They're already level 7. And I thought for sure by now somebody would have had an I know a guy who could have told them some of this. And then they've been in a couple of places that have had libraries, and nobody's asked to go into the library either. So I'm a little surprised at that. And I wonder if at the end they're going to regret, using their I know a guy to buy like spell scrolls and astral fragments that are going to be, that are such low-level spells, they're not even going to be using these spells by the time they're, 10th, 12th level. And, they didn't use it for the stuff that you can't find in a treasure room, right? I mean, it's always possible I could have randomly rolled, if I rolled on a random treasure table, for the scrolls that the cleric got, or for the astral fragment that the sorcerer wants. Or I might have put them in the magic item shop. But there's no chance that they're going to randomly find the clue, like the answer to the clues that they're getting. And so, that's going to require either them figuring it out or them talking to somebody who knows the answer and who they can convince to tell them the answer, to tell them stuff that the person who's telling them would know it's illegal to repeat. You're not supposed to tell people, nobody's supposed to know, right? If it's the I know a guy, well, he's going to be more likely to help. The rule is supposed to be that the character still has to make a persuade check. But I don't make it a hard persuade check because you know the guy and you're already friends, right? So it's like a fairly easy persuasion check. Because after all, if you're going to spend your point on this, it probably, if it's the only one you get or one of the only ones you get, it probably should work. So, so I found it very interesting, the kind of mundane things that they're spending this point on, rather than spending the point on let's find out what really happened here. Maybe we know somebody who's like a history expert and can tell us the truth. Nobody's thought to do that yet, and I find that sort of interesting. I think the sorcerer's ultimately going to regret using his I know a guy for this astral fragment, because you have to attune to it, and in D&D you can only attune to 3 magic items at a time. And he has a pendant from his mother that was already a free magic item that can do some cool stuff, most of which he doesn't know yet because he hasn't met his mother yet and she hasn't told him how to use it. So he knows he can do clairvoyance with it. He doesn't know it can also detect invisible, and it can detect magic. And I gave him those powers because I think a couple of them sorcerers, 1 or 2 of them sorcerers can't even do. And even if they could do them, I feel like these are spells, in fact I'm fairly certain these are spells he wouldn't bother to learn with his sorcerer, because sorcerers don't get a lot of spells, so he wouldn't want to waste it. But they're quite useful spells, and he might want to have them. So I basically tried to give him spells that would be useful, but he wouldn't normally burn a spell slot on, right? Anyway, so he's got the pendant, and then now he's going to have the astral fragment. And he also wants a ring of spell storing. He may have a chance to get that when he goes to Rome. But he also wants a Pearl of Power, and he also wants a Luckstone. All of those things, I believe, require attunement. So that's like 5 things. You can't attune to them all. And I have the feeling, you know, the Astral Fragment is more of a curiosity. He can teleport after using a metamagic if he wants. Half the time he's not going to even want to. The other half the time he's not going to use a metamagic before it only works when he uses a metamagic. He's not going to use that all the time as a sorcerer. So I have the feeling he's going to be sorry that he burned his very limited use resource on a magic item that probably within a level or 2 he's going to have much better stuff, and he's not even going to use it. And I'm guessing that even while he's attuned to it, he probably won't use it that many times before he levels up to the point where he doesn't need it anymore. I think he's going to use it 3 or 4 times and then not attune to it. Oh, and by the way, he also wants tattoos, and you have to attune to those too. And I think one of the reasons he wants the tattoos is because you can attune to multiple tattoos. But if you add up all the things he asked for, tattoos are 1, Ring of Spell Storing is 2, Luckstone is 3, I believe Pearl of Power is 4, and Astral Fragment is 5 things. All of them need attunement, and then of course he's also got the pendant that I gave him. So he's got 6 things to attune to, and he can only attune to 3 of them. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know how much he thinks he's going to use. Thinks he's going to get out of some of these things. I guess we'll have to see what happens. So we got to go back, I think, because I think over here there might be a hallway. Not sure what else we may have missed. Nope. Huh. So I missed somebody, guys. I'm going to pause it here as I look around, and I'll bring you back when I find them. Missed this door, and we got a couple guys. So this should be it. It's a little frustrating that +2 times 1 is just too easy, and +2 times 2 is a little too frustrating. Not quite too hard, but just too frustrating. And so yeah, I needed to be like +2 times 1.5 would be the sweet spot, and unfortunately you can't do that. So I think we're going to be stuck on +2 times 1 until we're done with the DE, and then we'll see as we get into the 40s. I don't know how we're going to do with multiple carnies. You could start getting into a lot of the master illusionists who are super annoying. So I don't know if we want to do ×3 with those. ×2, yes. ×3, not sure. We'll see how it goes. Let's talk to Ginger, who says, time is of the essence. You've got to get that woman back. So they've got Tanya, and we've got to get her back. And I don't think we're going to get her back because I think she's going to be turned into a DE. But we will find that out in the next episode, guys. Until then, I am Scrapperlock, and this is City of Heroes on the Rebirth server.